Thanks, Jasmine. I appreciate you. Derek here. Been at Vine Skills for a couple years now, and I handle optimization and go through it and do advanced reporting as well for law firms. So this is my bread and butter. So uh, right now, I guess, John, too, if there's anything you want to cover in particular, otherwise we can kind of hop into both. What I had planned today with was settlement statements, and then potentially how to nest fields within fusions for word and letters.
I'm the same exact way. Fusion sometimes can be a beast, or depending on your Excel knowledge, can really kind of help create or make them a little bit easier. And again, Derek is a master at fusions and all things Excel. So hopefully we can give you some tips and tricks to help them be a little bit easier for you. If there's any specific fusion that you're like, hey, I've tried to run this or tried to kind of do something, we can definitely try to dive into that as well. But if not, we'll have Derek start, I guess, here with the settlement statement, it looks like.
Yes, I have this and then a potential letter as well. I know sometimes those are very popular. Perfect. Awesome. So this is very basic, and I know Filevine kind of goes through and covers it. So we really just want to touch on some of the main things that we can do with these fusions to also make them work better, just in general, and some just tips and tricks that I've gone through and I've seen and I've used. Yes, we are doing that one too. We are about to onboard for that new settlement calculator. I go through and I use this one just because it's generally easier for people to go through and get, because it is Excel, and most people sadly don't like Excel. Like, it's a bad name. But so yes, a lot of this will go through and be able to be taken care of within FVDA with the settlement calculator. But this is still going to essentially apply in the same type of way that we can go through and create different things. Right now, this settlement statement, this would be just for one individual client. If you go through and generate it in their project, we do also have the ability to be able to, add different columns through Fusion to different reports too as well. Because I know sometimes it's limiting on there. But I don't have it ready or set up to show that, but we still definitely can go through and take a look at it, and I can show you how it would be done. Let me go through and generate my default. It's taking its sweet time today. Also doesn't help that I'm not patient, but it is what it is. Just go through and just add a couple two more sheets. We can touch on that too. Okay. So here I'm going through, and I have, of course, my general template. Let me move our faces. And here, I have our general detail. I have 3 different reports. I did my static report, which you're going to want to go through, and I generally put that static report first here in the included reports. That's going to help when we're creating Word fusions for nesting, being able to run the reports essentially together to create something like a demand letter or a document. Demand letters, usually those are a little too difficult, but it's the same type of thought of like, here's a list of all of our meds, here's a list of all of our liens, here's these types of things. You can also do this for internal reporting as well too. But that's just generally the best rule that you can go through is just put that static one first. I always have one, and that's where I pull a lot of my information, like the client name. If I'm going to go through and use the client name in something, I want to pull it from that static one and not from a repeating one. And that's just because it makes life easier as you're going through it. But I can look right here on my settlement statement that I have, and a lot of this it's not too difficult, thankfully, because of how Filevine sets things up. So here I can do my meds first. We have all of our different fields here that we see in Filevine. And that's going to, of course, like with our reports, it's going to pull the data. Here at the very beginning of the fusion, we have what we call it's a note box. And this is how Excel understands, okay, what parts of the report need to go where. So if I use this note, or if I copy and move it over to a new cell, this is telling Excel that this is where I want like a repeating range to start. Like a list of meds or a list of liens, is a collection section you could have multiples of. So I'm going through and I can just easily pull some of this information over here. I just want to pull this note, and I pulled it out to the side, and that's really just because I want to put mine right there. A lot of times I find myself merging merging text boxes like this. So then it's cleaner. We don't have to work, the data is set in specific spots. But you put a note there. It won't actually work if you try to go through and upload it into Filevine. So that's why we have this little box here on the side. It's just kind of a helper column for us. It makes it nice and easy to be able to know, hey, these are not going to be pasted in any type of merge cells. And then I can do the same thing with the end repeat note, which is going to be the same for all of them in general. Let me go through and just pull that, and we'll paste it right there. Perfect. Within it, I can just pull my fields then that I want. So I'm going to just copy and paste. Oops, do it up here. There we go. And then we can get my original balance. Yeah, let's see here. Agreed reduction total is my next one that I want. Oh, and then I duplicated this. Oops. Don't actually need both of those. Cool. Okay, so very basic right there. But now I could go through and just make sure my formatting is exactly how I want it. Make sure that it's not in a bunch of different ones. I don't even know what that one was, that font. But I can do all my fixes there. And then I want to come here too, and I want to know what the totals are. So in my net amount right there, I want to have my final balance to, I believe that is the one I have. Oh no, I didn't pull that one, so we could do the amount minus the reduction is our final amount there. And I'm going to put some error handling around that so that if we do have an error, it's going to just pull blank. So then we don't see that the value or divide by 0 or issues like that. That's what that's for. Perfect. So now I could go through and upload this and generate this fusion, and it'll go through then and pull all of my medical bills from that collection section. As long as they meet the criteria of my report, how I have it set up, it'll pull all of those out. Same thing with my liens just in general. I can go through and do the same thing, pull that basic information in, and just quickly be able to upload it. This is definitely the easy part when it comes down to fusions. There are for sure some more difficult things out there. But I think this is important to know, just the very, very basics of it. Copy that project name over, and I want to just do some formatting changes to make this just look a little bit nicer. Do all of those like that. Oh yeah, John, where do you want to back up to? How far back do you want me to go? You're good. So did you start with this Excel doc without it emerging and then just start adding them from the template? Yes, this is an Excel sheet that I already had that was formatted in a way that I wanted to or already have it. But yeah, you can a lot of times, like if I'm going through and I'll be working with some, you don't understand where we started. Gotcha. Okay, so sorry about that. So my template that I originally went through and built, I have for my 3 different reports that I created in the background. This SS or this free help static, this leans, and this meds. So I built those 3 different reports in the back and added them right here in the included reports. For me, I like to go through and put that F dash just because then I know, okay, this is going to be a fusion report. And then I don't want to mess with that potentially later on and cause issues with fusions if I've already built one. So in the background, oh, sorry, Jasmine.
I would say when you're adding in the reports, it's best to add in that static report first before adding in your collection options.
Yep, absolutely. Because that's just formatting, especially if we're doing word fusions. But I went through and I built each of my reports here in the background. These ones were very basic for me. And I don't think I actually applied any filters to these reports because I'm going to only run them just for one project at a time. That was the thought process I had as I went through and built the reports before this call today. So after I went through and I built all my reports, then what I did was I generated this default template from this page right here, and I downloaded it. And the default template, what does the template look like where you pull in the reports? So this would be the reports just by themselves.
So essentially, once you run the report and put it into the report fusion option, you'll be able to download or generate that. And then you'll see at the very bottom of this Excel page, there are different tabs. So you'll see that free help static. These are all of the codes from that static report. And then leans and meds, those are, again, all of the fields from the leans and meds report that you ran. So this is where you're going to go to grab all of those codes that you're going to be utilizing in the other document Derek was showing. So for the other document, that was a template that he already had laid out for how he wanted his settlement statement to look. Some firms already kind of have, before working in Filevine, they're like, here's how we were doing our settlement statements. It's kind of already formatted in a certain way. And so that's what that other document was that he was bringing the formulas into, or sorry, the fields into.
Yeah, and this was just a standard one because it's familiar to people. But yes, the tabs are created by the report. So these sheets down here, you can see each of them has that same title, static leans meds. They all have the same title as these included reports right here. So then each individual report will have, as you go, if you were to run it by itself in the report builder, we get all this information here. When I go through and rerun it, and I use these start and end fields, it's going to tell Filevine's going to know which report to pull it on exactly. So because I'm working in, I believe it was the Fusion free help one. So it would be this line essentially when I do actually run my Fusion that would pull in. Yep. And yeah, this default template right here, that just gives you the fields. That just gives you the keys essentially you need to be able to go through and put that information in different places. So for this settlement statement, I just was able to copy in the fields from the one report and then paste them over here and do that for each one. Because you can see I have my start code right here that has, and if you read that note, it says the free help SS meds. And then this one says the free help SS leans. So really, yeah, as I go through and I'm working on these, sometimes if I need to add another field, I will end up going into the report builder, adding that new column in the background. right through here and then coming back and then just saving, but making sure not to delete any different or anything from these columns in general, so I don't break any potential fusions that may be using this report. And then once I have that, I can just regenerate. I can regenerate a new default template from here, and I'll have those new fields that I need then to be able to continue building. Awesome. So then we also, with these fields, we've covered the repeating ranges, I should say. And that's looking at our, we have our meds, which is going to go through and repeat for each item that we have in Filevine. Same thing for liens. Now, there's going to be times too, though, where you don't need something to repeat. You just need it to pull out just one time. And so what we can do is use this note here at the very beginning. We can use that to just tell the fusion, say, hey, I just want to have the very first result of this report show up here. So if I'm running this one report essentially through the fusion, since it's a static report, it's only going to show me just the one case. And so I can then just pull any of these things in here just one time, which is perfect, especially if I want to go through and have, like the phase of a case be listed. Let's say if I just want the phase right here, if I ran it like this, nothing would happen because it's not within a repeating range like these are. I need to go through then and add a little bit extra to it. And what I do is I just come here and I'm going to edit this note. And then I can copy the report ID from the very front. And then when I add it, I'm going to add this to my field, and I'm going to just paste it in there with Command V and then put 2 colons. And then now if I were to upload this, Filevine's going to say, okay, I need to put the phase from the very first line of this report number right here. And so that'll go through then and it'll put it in there for us. Now, if I was reporting on, let's say, all of my projects at the same time, I wouldn't want to go through and use this because it's only going to give me information just from one report. So if I were to come to this one, let's see here. Actually, yeah, if I were to come here and I wanted to put, make some just other notes on it, we'll put client detail, and then let me just pull these in right here. And let me add an end repeat. End underscore repeat. Now, if I were to upload this and run it, this would be my repeating range. So if I have 10 items, that data is going to duplicate all the way back down like that. But this client, any information above that or that's not in that range won't repeat for us. So it's just something to be aware of if you're going through and making these big reports. If you do those or do both of them, yeah, the notes establish that range. But yeah, that's how you'll go through and you'll handle that.
And the end repeat is not specific. You saw Derek just type in hashtag end repeat. The begin repeat is specific. So if you're ever getting like an error for your fusion, you may want to check your begin repeat to make sure that it's pulling in. You'll see it says begin repeat and then the name of the actual report and the report number in that begin repeat. So you do need to make sure that that is specific to the data that you're pulling in. The end repeat doesn't have to be, but the begin repeat does. And those two pieces are essentially saying everything between this, the first red triangle and the last red triangle is going to repeat. Anything outside of that, we're just going to pull one time, whatever that very first option is. So if you did pull out phase and you, didn't want that to repeat because maybe you added that in as criteria, you can remove that from that range. That way you're not, again, having to say, see again, phase 15 times. It's always going to be the same. So you can take that out of that begin, repeat, end repeat.
Yeah. So show you where you got the report name and number. So when I went through and saved my 3 reports originally, I mean, here's a report name and a report number, but I'm going to go through and I'm going to pull it from the default template. So I have my default template here, and I'm getting it by right-clicking and hitting Edit Note. And then, but that's going to just automatically generate it for me when I do go through and just create a default template, because I can just download this one again and open it up, and it's just right there for me. And I'm able to see it here too. Yep. Yes, they'll go through and they'll do it. And I do recommend also, think about how you're naming your reports too as well, because of that, because it's essentially it's however you have it listed in Filevine is what that report name is going to be. This could also affect if you rename a report later on, if you're already using it for a fusion. It might, those other fusions aren't likely going to go through and work for you anymore, because that won't automatically update for you. So that's why I have a naming convention like this, so then I can easily tell and easily manage all of my reports. I can know exactly which fusions they go to, just based off of how I'm putting them in there. This one I will always know is for free help, and it's a settlement statement is the basic thought behind it. So, and I'll always know be able to pull those. So generally with fusions, a lot of the ones that I see the most are, they were things like the settlement statement, but I've also seen case summary ones. So if I wanted to go through and get a basic information about what's going on in the project, as soon as I hop in there, I can create a fusion and that would pull all of this information in, much like how a settlement statement would. As long as, if there's a field on it, we can go through and we can report on it. And some things are definitely, are more user friendly when it comes down to reporting. Like single line lists aren't as friendly. We have different ways to potentially work around with them, but it's not a perfect science for those ones. So let's see. Okay, so then another thing I talked about potentially is adding columns. I'm not able to go through and just, take this field from this liens report and paste it as another column within that repeating range, or even outside that repeating range. I can't do it on the same line. If I try to do that, Filevine will kick it back to me, and it will say, you're not able to actually go through and do this, or it's not recognized. So I can go through and kind of show that too as we can continue going. But I know sometimes that is an issue. I think I was running a task report at one point for someone, and we want to be able to see who the working attorney was on it. And so what we did was, where we couldn't go through, let's see here. Where's that one at? Okay, downloads. And it's number 2. Okay. Since I wasn't able to go through and just copy that column over, we had to go through and get a little creative. And that's when formulas can come into play for us in Excel. And that is the beauty of it, is because most things that are native to Excel can work, with the exception of a handful of things like macros. We're not able to go through and upload those into Filevine. It's going to be this period, or this .xlsx template. That file format is the only one that can go in there for Excel. And I can't use array formulas because Filevine doesn't have a way to go through and really understand what that means, or what it means for it to be an array formula. So there's a lot of times you have to get a little creative on how we're looking at different things. Let's see if this one comes here. Yeah, generally they're formulas. A lot of times I'm doing just the same basic ones. Oh, here we go. Here's our error. You can see that we have the initial lien amount is not found in that report. So it won't even accept it into Filevine for me. So yeah, if I wanted to go through then and let's say, move this from one page to the other, I'm going to have to use something like XLOOKUP to be able to go through and pull it out. but I can do all of my same basic formulas as I normally would. Let's see here. So like for doing the sum of, or these totals here, I can come in and I can put sum and just drag these two down and hit enter. And then what that'll go through and do is when I generate it, it will, as these numbers continue to move down, it'll go through and it'll give me the sum. And you can get complicated with your formulas too, because this is one that I've used or that I use to go through and get this part so that it reads, so it actually fills out the 14th day of January 2024. That is the formulas on it. And you can go through and do those. And I don't think I have any that don't work, minus the ones I mentioned. And you can't put an ampersand within a formula either. If you do that, generally I see a bunch of errors occur on the report when I actually go through and generate it. But yes, otherwise your general Excel formulas will work. And I believe we have a list of common terms. I think we went through and we shared it at one point, but I know we have one in there that we've shared it with a bunch of people, a bunch of firms, just so that they can kind of see which formulas work or I use the most in the things that I'm working on. Jasmine, would you be able to possibly look at that? I think it is in our shared drive, probably in the free help stuff.
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, and it gives just a very basics on it, and a lot of times you can ask communities too, or you can look online, or even talk to AI. They can kind of help you, guide you through it. If you just have to be very specific on how you want your formula to function and the things that you have to watch out for. And so it just takes a lot of practice too. But yeah, that's also an excellent resource to be able to learn how to do some of these things. One common thing that I do a lot to be able to just add one column to another report is I will go through and I will use VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP. Yeah, AI is great for it. It really is. I would definitely recommend it, and just take it sentence by a time. And AI, it can come up with some really interesting things, and I have learned some stuff from it too that I didn't realize before. But so with the just moving a one column over from one sheet to another, usually what I do in each of my reports is I'll pull in this Filevine URL, because that's going to be unique for each of our individual projects. It may not be unique if you have a collection section, but it will be unique if it is like multiple project reports, all of those put together, or if you're just trying to pull information from a static report into a collection section report. And so I don't have this one here. If I went through and I have my Filevine URL, I can make a formula that goes through and references this cell on that other sheet and then pull data in from that. So, and I would recommend, definitely looking up XLOOKUP if you're not familiar with it. But I want to look up this Filevine URL, and the lookup array that I want is going to be the full column. And it's going to be the same column where I have that other Filevine URL. And then I can determine what column I want to move over. This isn't going to be very functional, but I'm going to just have reduction, and I can go through and close it off like that. So now you can see I have my reduction here. It did go through and it pulls over. I still am faced with the issue, though, that I can't go through and upload this into Filevine without it yelling at me like this. We'd go through and we'd be doing the same thing. Yeah, we'd be doing the same thing anyway. Yeah, XLOOKUP it takes a little practice to get used to it. The way I like to think of it is I want to find object A in this other column. And if I find if it matches, if I have a perfect match on it, then I want one of the corresponding cells within that row to come back to me. I think it's easier than VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP, you have to also go through and count the number of columns that you want to, or like you're looking from, let's see, C to L, and I want to search for everything in C and then return whatever is in this column, and I have to count each of those out. I don't like the VLOOKUP, but XLOOKUP, if you have Office 365 or Excel 2019 or newer, that's definitely the way to go. I think it adds a lot more functionality and just is easier to craft and work with, because this wasn't too bad to be able to go through and just pull it up in there. You can also, too, as you're going through and building some of these things, if I wanted to, I can rename these sheets however I want. And it's not going to affect our note or anything. It's still going to appear that same way. So you don't have to worry about it. It's just, for aesthetics, really. But then I can come here and I can make it so, it says data. Now it's a lot easier for me to kind of go through and read. There's a lot less characters there, and it's a lot less intimidating. I can see exactly where I want to, what I'm looking for, and then see that I'm looking in column F on this data sheet. Oops. Yeah, column F on that data sheet, and then I want to return column E. Now, we did use a formula to be able to go through and move this over. But like I said, if I try to upload it, it's going to yell at me. And so to work around through that, really, I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to add a simple test to it. You can do this in a bunch of different ways. I find one of the easiest ones is just to create another formula around it, an if statement. I'm going to do if, and if this entire, or if, let's see here, I want, if A2 equals, and then in quotes, I'm going to put just org name, make it spell the exact same way that that field is. Then I don't want it to do anything. I want it to be blank. Otherwise, I want it then to go through and run my formula. So now it's blank. It's not showing anything. But if I type anything else here, it does appear. So now I can upload this into Filevine, and it would go through and it would give me that. It would then put information in there. I will say, though, just keep out with XLOOKUP. It only goes through and will pull in your first line item, just like we had talked about, go through and put those numbers in the project or the report ID at the beginning of your field. You can work with it a little bit by coming up here to search mode. I think if I get all the way over there, it's -1. Yeah, search last to first. Generally, I'm using this one as when I'm going through and I'm trying to, I should have accepted it. Well, when I'm going through and trying to get information from a static report onto a collection section report, or if I'm going through and I'm creating a brand new sheet that's just kind of referencing all of the other data. A lot of times I'll find myself too going through, starting with a static report and then pulling information from each of the different collection sections. And if through some, well, it is the advanced reporting, but through some fancy work, we can go through and we can get information from a collection section pulled into just that one page of it. Using concatenate is usually a good one, and XLOOKUP, use those a lot. So index and match, those do not like to work in or with Excel and Filevine, because it's going to go through and be, I believe it's part of like an array formula for it. I don't ever use it because it just has never actually worked for me. Usually I'm going through and having to come up with other different types of ideas to figure out the best way to go about it. But yeah, because it'll always say go through and do index and match, which does work, just not as well when you're going through and you're trying to generate from Filevine here onto a page or into a Fusion report. So it's just one of those limitations. I will use a combination of, it's going to sound a little weird, but count ifs, and then my concatenate, and XLOOKUP usually is how I go through and I will get information. I'm able to find all my information on one page and then move it to another, or new for one sheet and then move it to another. So a lot of times you'll see I will manipulate or manipulate data in this sheet by itself. And then once I get my actual formatted column the way that I like it, then I reference it with XLOOKUP on the other sheet. So, and I know there's a lot of different ways to go about this. It's just because we can't use the native features of Excel the way that Microsoft would want us to, we just have to get a little creative. And a lot of times that's just helper columns and helper sheets. I think a lot of reports I have just have a bunch of them. So can you give me an example on the settlement statement of when I would need to use XLOOKUP? Let's see here. What's going to be, let me see it, because normally that's not when I have to do it on, but okay. So is that going to be a little too messy? Okay, let me just make some adjustments. We don't necessarily need it for you, this example. We wouldn't need it for the actual settlement statement itself. Generally, those are pretty easy. The name time you'd actually go through and I shouldn't say easy. Those are pretty straightforward. We don't have to get as creative. A lot of times I go through and I'll use XLOOKUP in these different formulas when I'm creating like KPI reports, being able to pull, information firm wide, or having to reference just a point of data that I can't actually get into a report. Because if you've gone through in Report Builder, and there's sometimes you can't pull things, specific things in different types of reports, and this is how we get past that essentially, is by using those data points to match up those Filevine URLs generally, and then being able to pull that information over. Which then, John, too, if you want to go through, then we'll end up going through and getting our information or giving our information. But if you have want to shoot us an email after all this too, I can go through and get come up with an example and show you a better way of how that'll go through and work, since this isn't necessarily set up for that. Perfect. Okay, cool. Let's see here. We are coming close on time. Do you have anything else that you want to go through and touch on, or anything that I may not have, or I may have confused you on? I'm happy to go through and clarify anything that we need to. And thanks, Jasmine. I appreciate you posting those in the chat.
Yeah, of course. While we kind of wait to see if John has any additional questions, did want to point out, John, if you are having issues with fusions and you need additional support, we do have a couple of options for our post-launch support. We have hourly support options. So if you're like, hey, I have a couple of questions, or would like to get on a call and kind of, go through some of this stuff, we definitely have options for that. Or if you want to go all the way up to optimization, you can do that as well. I'm going to go ahead and post that in the chat. And then if you find yourself using quite a few fusions, you may want to look into FVDA, which is Outlaw Doc Assembly. They're all the same thing. It's an auxiliary product that Filevine offers that's kind of like a document management. It's a cross between a Fusion and a DocGen. It is not as robust as an Excel sheet, right? It's not going to be able to concatenate or like any of those things, but it does allow you to bring in multiple collection section items into a document, formatting, using contingencies, everything like that. So if that's something that you're interested in, we do demos. So if you're like, hey, I would like to see what that looks like, we can definitely set you up with a demo so that you can see if that product would, align a little bit better. And then I know Derek mentioned about
Nice.
doing doing some of those more advanced reporting. And so if that's something that's needed, you know, we're always here. We try to be as helpful as possible. And we're always varying our services to kind of encapsulate or include everyone and their individual needs. So if you do need anything or do want to see kind of any of our support options, feel free to check out our website. And then again, you see Derek and my email, so that if you do have questions or want to engage, you can let us know. Not sure how long you've been in Filevine for, but we also offer free Filevine audits. So if you've been in the system for quite some time, might be nice to kind of get a free Filevine audit to see how you're utilizing the system or not.
Have you?
Okay,
if you've been in there for that long, you might want to take us up on that. Just because I know that's when I first launched originally. They made a lot of adjustments. If you all haven't gone through and done that, added some of the newer features that Filevine has.
So I went ahead and put that link in the chat as well. You can also find it on our website, but we'll do a free Filevine audit. There are a couple of kind of options for what you can do as far as your audit. My apologies. You can do USIT or template audits, which is again great, especially if you've been in it for some time, to kind of see where you all are at, what you're using, how you're utilizing the template, how you're underutilizing the template, and all of that good stuff. So feel free to reach out to us for that as well. And yeah, I think, and I'm sure 2018, they've released so many new features since then. So I'm sure that there's items that you all are using that like are either obsolete or have just been revamped. And because you all have been in Filevine so long, it's difficult to make some of those adjustments sometimes into those new products. So we're definitely here and happy to help in any way that we can. Yeah. Yeah, they've released a lot of new stuff. So those folks that are using the yield section still and everything like that looks very different for the new folks. And there's, still new stuff always on the horizon with Filevine. So always get kind of a check-in, a pulse on where you're at and where your template is at. Again, just so that you can make the most out of Filevine. Okay. Yeah, everybody calls it something different. But yeah, that's awesome to hear. Hopefully this fusion session helped you out. Derek again is phenomenal at this, so thank you for imparting a little bit of your wisdom on us here today, Derek. John, if you do need anything, feel free to reach out to us. Again, we're happy to help, and if not, hopefully we'll see you at our next free help sessions. They're every Wednesday this same time, and we do record them, so feel free to watch past recordings. But again, thank you so much, and thanks, Derek. Have a great rest of your day. Of course.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care, John.